If you own a property and want to rent it out, there is a lot you should know about the rental laws in your state so you can be aware of your rights and avoid expensive problems. Let's talk about the rental laws in Arizona. In this video, we'll briefly examine types of rental leases, what landlords must disclose about a property, tenants' rights, and evictions. Make sure to hit the link below for a template for lease agreements and eviction notices that will work in Arizona. First, let's talk about the types of rental leases. An Arizona lease agreement outlines the terms and conditions of a rental arrangement between a landlord and a tenant. There are 6 types of lease agreements in Arizona: standard, commercial, month-to-month, rent-to-own, room rental, and sublease. A standard lease agreement has a fixed beginning and end date and generally lasts for 12 months. A commercial lease agreement is used when a landlord rents a space to a business. A month-to-month lease agreement has a start date but no end date and can be terminated with 30 days notice by the landlord or the tenant. A rent-to-own lease agreement is used when the tenant wants to eventually purchase the property. This one involves the tenant paying rent like a typical renter but having the option to purchase. A room rental agreement is used for renting a room in a shared space. A sublease agreement is an agreement between a primary tenant and a subtenant. The primary tenant must have express permission from their landlord to enter into a sublease agreement with a subtenant. The agreement makes the primary tenant responsible for the subtenant. In addition, per Arizona law, landlords must also make 8 disclosures to tenants before signing the lease agreement. Let's talk about them. The first relates to bed bugs. Landlords are required to give tenants educational materials about bed bugs and how they spread. The landlord is also required to give the tenant a copy of the Arizona Landlord and Tenant Act, which outlines the tenant's rights. A lead-based paint disclosure form must be attached to the lease. If the property was built before 1978, the house is likely to contain lead-based paint, which is a health hazard. The landlord must tell the tenant this. All leases are also required to have a move-in and move-out checklist attached, which is an assessment of the state of the property that can help the landlord to determine how much of a security deposit to return to the tenant when the tenant moves out. The landlord must also inform the tenant who is managing the property and give notice about pool safety if the property has a pool. Finally, the landlord has to tell the tenant if utilities are billed based on a shared meter and if the business pass-through tax goes up and will affect rent. The law also states that the landlord has to give 48 hours notice before entering the property for any non-emergency inspections or maintenance. Now, let's turn our attention to evictions. Eviction is the process of legally removing a tenant from their rental unit. The first step is to formally serve the tenant with a notice to quit, which is also known as an eviction notice. There are 4 types of eviction notices in Arizona. An immediate notice informs the tenant that they have breached the lease in a serious way, such as distributing illegal drugs on the property, and instructs the tenant to leave immediately. A 5-day notice to quit is used when the tenant doesn't pay rent on time. This one tells the tenant to either pay rent within 5 days or leave the premises. A 10-day notice to quit notifies the tenant that they have breached the lease in some other way, such as housing an unauthorized pet. It gives the tenant 10 days to fix the problem or move out. A 30-day notice to quit is a little bit different because it's used in situations of month-to-month tenancies. This one doesn't necessarily indicate that the tenant has breached the lease, but it does end a month-to-month arrangement with 30 days notice. At eForms, the world's largest database of official legal documents, we've got every form that you'll need to run a legal rental business in Arizona, from lease agreements to property management agreements to notices to quit. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos about real property and other complicated legal matters.